my partner in crime, Nathan Swan, and with us again is Evan Tenenbaum, because today we're going to talk about the start of spring training. Evan, I guess you want to start talking about the Texas Rangers?
Yeah, I do. As you can see in my icon, I am currently wearing my Texas Rangers jersey, getting ready for spring training. The Rangers have started their spring training. They showed up in surprise a few days ago, and basically everyone's there trying to get things underway. Basically, the next 5 or 6 weeks, Rangers want to focus on a couple key things in order to improve their team enough for the beginning of the season. And so I'm going to really highlight 3 important battles that the Rangers want to figure out in spring training. So the first one was kind of already figured out last week when Mike Napoli signed a 1-year, $6.5 million contract with the Rangers to be the first baseman. For a while there, the Rangers were kind of freaking out on who's going to be their first baseman. They were thinking a platoon of James Loney or Jurickson Profar or Josh Hamilton even would have to suffice, but they signed Mike Napoli, who will probably not start every day, but he will get a majority of the starts at first base. So the best thing about that really is that it gives flexibility to the Rangers to put people in other positions. More specifically, they allows them to swing Shin-Soo Choo to the designated hitter, and then Mazara to right field, and that leaves a spot for in left field. And that's going to be the key offensive battle. And I'll go quickly over some of the candidates and maybe their advantages and maybe who I think will end up getting that. Probably the most likely will be Ryan Rua. He's been a staple on the team for the past 3 years. He is probably the best defensive player of any of the candidates in left field, has the most experience, but he did kind of have a bad end of the second half last year, covering time when he was splitting between him and DeShields or before the Rangers got Carlos Gomez. So we'll have to see if he can step up his offensive game. Second most likely would be Jurickson Profar. I foresee both Rua and Profar end up kind of doing a platoon thing where one would hit lefties, one would hit righties, even though Profar is a switch hitter. Both of them kind of need to step up and make sure, especially Profar, who's been in the league since 2012 and hasn't really solidified himself as an everyday starter, especially Profar, who still wants to be a middle infielder, but are blocked by both Andrus and Rougned Odor. So he needs to make a name for himself in left field. And then other candidates, I guess you could say, is Delano DeShields, who's probably the best base runner or the best runner of all the potential outfielders, but his arm is not so good, and his offense was pitiful last year. You'll have to see him. I think he dropped about 15 pounds over the off season, so maybe he'll be a better route runner, or maybe he'll work on specifically his arm taking balls. So he profiles more as a fourth outfielder. We'll see how he goes, and then the rest are really AAA fodder. Travis Snyder signed a minor league contract. It would have to take failures of the top 3 in order for him to make a spot. Same to, I guess, Flex and James Loney and Josh Hamilton. Josh Hamilton, if he's healthy, he could potentially earn the last spot on the roster. And then there's also Joey Gallo, who at this point with the Mike Napoli signing seems to be content or seems to understand that he's going to start the year in AAA. He needs to work on getting his strikeout percentage down before he can make it in the majors. But once he does, he'll be a deep power threat for a few years. That's really the super utility spot is what you can call that battle. Again, I think Ryan Rua and Jurickson Profar are going to end up, platooning / winning those spots. Simmons, what do you think about that spot based on your knowledge of the Rangers?
I mean, going back to what you were saying, at first I was kind of leaning towards maybe some sort of platoon between Rua and Gallo, just more so just because of the possible ceiling of that pairing together. If you pair together Gallo's insane amount of power with Rua's defensive ability, plus decent ability to hit to make contact, you could probably have a decent left fielder But that being said, like right now, that's just a hole that they have sort of like left open and are going to see how they're going to just how whoever steps up and takes over. That being said, I mean it's kind of hard to tell what's going to happen. Looks like they're going to be moving Chu to full-time DH. Which that position also seems like it's going to get crowded kind of soon, especially if they want to if they want to also like start moving Adrian into that, so putting him in every once in a while there too as he gets older. That being said, it's hard to really have much of an opinion on who should be starting out in the left field corner until spring training gets further along. But we'll see. We'll see. Anything else about the Rangers?
Yeah. So the other big battle, I guess you could say, is who will be the quote unquote fifth starter in the rotation. The Rangers did sign Tyson Ross to essentially fill that role, but he's still recovering from his surgery last year. The optimistic reporters say that he will be available late April or early May, like healthy, ready to go. So the Rangers need a spot, a fifth starter to make up that time. And also, just for the rest of the season, you're going to have people get hurt. So you need a competent fifth/sixth starter to make those spot starts or come in for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and make a few starts. So the most likely candidate is going to be AJ Griffin, who also made the team as the fifth starter out of spring training last year. He needs to work on his off-speed pitches, making sure they stay down in the zone. He was a home run machine last year when his off-speed pitches were not working, but he was pretty good the first 4 or 5 starts that he had last year. But then he got hurt, and then his off-speed faltered. But look for him to earn his spot back. Then you got the Rule 5 pick, Michael Housechild. I don't know much about him other than he probably is the tiebreaker, considering he is a Rule 5 draft pick from the Houston Astros. So he'll have to take a good spring training in order for him to make the team, or really to even stay on the team for the entire year. It's probably not going to happen. The Astros might get him back. Then a couple other fodder names. Nick Martinez, he's been in the league for like 3 years. He's probably not going to profile any higher than a bottom of the rotation pitcher. He actually might be in danger of losing his 40-man spot if things go sour. Same thing for Chichi Gonzalez, former first-round pick. He really needs to spend the spring training focusing on other pitches in his repertoire. Have other minor league invitees like veteran Dylan G. He's really only there for depth, and Tyler Wagner in there for depth. And then I guess the best prospect, Johan Hernandez, for starting pitching, is very unlikely to make the team out of spring training. You'll probably see him in September. The best case scenario for the Rangers would be for him to show up in September. So, yeah, that's pretty much the battle for fifth starter. It may not even matter in the end if Tyson Ross comes back clean and healthy and plays well. And the other position that the Rangers kind of want to see focus on this spring training would be a left-handed reliever spot. They had Jake Diekman, but he did get surgery from complications from his ulcerative colitis. He's going to be out for half of the season. So that pushes a guy like Alex Claudio to the forefront of the lefty reliever. You don't know how confident you could be in Alex Claudio as your main lefty guy out of the bullpen. And just depending on how the bullpen's even set up, he may be your only lefty reliever. The Rangers haven't had good experience with having only one lefty in the pen in years past. So they might want to look towards some guys that are trying to earn some spots. Andrew Faulkner and Dario Alvarez, I see they're most likely candidates. I personally like Dario Alvarez. He pitched pretty well for Atlanta last year. Then he got traded to the Rangers. He had 17 strikeouts in 11 2/3 innings, but he did give up a lot of runs. So his ERA kind of faltered. Faulkner's kind of on the opposite side. His FIP, which is a measurement of like walks and home runs given up based on league average, is much worse than Alvarez's. But Faulkner has the experience, and he's been on the major league team for longer. So I really see it, the battle between those two. Neither of them might not even make the team, depending on how they want to set up the relievers. but they do have to make up those innings that Jake Diekman would have thrown. So yeah, that's the three main battles that are going to be going on for the Rangers in camp. The super utility spot is 1, the 5th starter is 2, and then the potential second lefty would be 3. Nathan Simmons, did you have any thoughts on any of that?
I just feel like the Rangers coming into this year are coming into this year like the least prepared. To me, they have like the least amount of depth that they've had before. Like in prior years, they're able to sort of like rely on that deep farm system that they had to fill in for any roles. Specifically, I remember when back in 2012, like we not only did we have like Kinsler, but we also had Jurickson Profar coming up. Then after that, we the next year we had Rugi Odor that was able to come in and all that. But now it's just after all those trades for veteran help at the trade deadline, it feels like we finally sort of have reached the point where this farm system has been genuinely sort of driven out from a lot of its resources. And on top of that, I'd say a lot of that also has to do with just prospects that we were counting on to step up at this point, not being able to, specifically Chichi Gonzalez. I mean, Dylan Tate ended up getting traded, but I mean, like had he not been nearly as bad as he was last year, then I don't think we trade him for Carlos Beltran. But at the end of the day, it's just you got to roll with what you have. I don't have high expectations for this team, although like at the same time, like it's I'm still gonna root for them, but at the same time, like you have people like Adrian Beltre, Yu Darvish, and Cole Hamels that like really that they're going to be taking so much more of a role now in Shin-Soo Choo as well, and Jonathan Lucroy, and I guess Carlos Gomez. Like the veterans have to really step up this year. And Rugi's also he's got to sort of like return to the he was good last year, but I remember 2015 playoffs, like he was looking like he might be a borderline star. So he's got to sort of like refine that form that he had back then. But outside of that, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, Rougned Odor, specifically for Rougned Odor, his focus is to be more patient, take more walks, don't swing at everything. His OBP was pitiful last year. His defense wasn't that great. Of course, sabermetrics are kind of erratic with fielding, so you never know. Yeah, again, his focus is to a little be more patient at the plate. So we'll see if that happens or not. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to mention about the Rangers. Earlier this week, Colby Lewis sent out a statement to the Dallas media, basically thanking the city for his time as a Texas Ranger, basically conceding that he's not going to get a minor league contract even with the Rangers to go to spring training, as a sort of admittance of defeat. So we've come to officially to an end of an era where Colby Lewis, who you could consider the best Rangers pitcher in the playoffs ever, is no longer on the team, and he is looking for other work. It's really sad.
It really is sad to see him go, you know, especially in some sort of not even sort of like glorified way. He just like very quietly is sort of bowing out, which is unfortunate. I think he's probably I think he's someone that deserves to have a place in the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame, not Baseball Hall of Fame, but the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame for all that he was able to do in the playoffs. But yeah, it really is kind of sad to see him go out this way. I mean, I remember last year, like in the first half of the season, it looked like he was back to like his great form back in 2010, even 2011. But he got hurt, and when he came back, he just wasn't that effective.
Yeah, one quick note on Lewis. So I actually went to a game last year with the Astros and the Rangers, and Lewis, he was pitching, and he pitched a great game. He got a line drive off his head, and it ended up being a catch in the outfield by Rougned Odor. But just his grittiness and toughness, he just kind of shook it off. The training staff went out for the Rangers to look at him, and then he was okay, and he kept pitching. I guess that kind of just shows the character of what player he was.
He really
Definitely
was a great veteran presence, honestly. Like, I mean, like if a team wants someone to at least like come in and sort of like give and sort of like set the tone in the locker room, like Colby would be the perfect candidate for that at the very least. Like, I think he has like once he retires from like the field, like I can very easily see him like going into like either like joining joining a front office or coaching somewhere. I hope for the best for the guy.
Yeah, I actually do have a theory on where he might end up, though. Um, so in 2015, Colby Lewis throws a complete game shutout Maddox against the Oakland A's on September 11th. Last year, he has a perfect game through 8 1/3 innings against Oakland in June. So if you were the Oakland Athletics, how do you prevent getting almost perfect gamed on? You sign Colby Lewis. Case in point, case closed.
O.co, baby.
Yeah, O.co. But anyway, I hope for the best for Colby Lewis, and I hope he finds a team soon. That's it for the Rangers. I'm sure more stories will come out of spring training in Surprise, Arizona. But let's move on to their AL West division rivals, the Houston Astros. Nathan Kwan, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so the Astros' biggest spring training news is their brand new facility that they opened. It's a joint venture with the Washington Nationals called the Ballpark of the Palm Springs, $150 million complex, and it's got a lot of baseball fields and big Houston Astros logos, and a lot of the players that have reported in have been very impressed by the new complex. The biggest issues for the team, I would say, are the starting rotation. So they had a collective mediocre 4.37 ERA last year, and they really didn't make too many big splashy signings in the offseason. They added Charlie Morton from the Phillies, and he's kind of the back of the end of the rotation starter. They really need to have a healthy bounce back season from both Dallas Keuchel, who won the Cy Young in 2015, and Lance McCullers, who really was burst onto the scene and was a big part of that playoff team in 2015. And he was out with a back injury last year. Colin McHugh had a bad year last year. He needs to bounce back. And then the back end, you have Morton, as I mentioned, and Joe Musgrove, who came up last year and was quite effective down the stretch, filling in for the hurt Keuchel and McCullers. And you have Mike Fiers, but he had an okay year. He'll be in the mix along with Brad Peacock. So it's really, the Astros are hoping for a lot of health and bounce back seasons from a lot of their veterans in the rotation. As far as the overall dynamic of the team, they added a lot of veterans. Carlos Beltran, Josh Reddick, Nori Aoki. And so the dynamic of this team really has changed. And so I think what's going to be kind of interesting looking forward is what the role of the younger players that have had opportunities but haven't made the most of them at the big leagues, and what their role on this team would be. And so these would be players like Colin Moran, AJ Reed, Preston Tucker, Tyler White, and Teoscar Hernandez. Tucker came up in 2015. He was a big part of that playoff team, but he was in the minors for most of last year. And Tyler White was actually the opening day first baseman last year. And after that torrid start where he hit over 400 the first month of the year, he really regressed and went back to AAA for the rest of the year. And so he's taking some reps at third base. And so it'll be interesting to see how AJ Hinch pieces it all together, because this team has a lot more depth, especially in the infield, that it didn't have at the beginning of last year. Yeah, so another spot I want to talk about is first base. So the first base has been a black hole for the Astros the past couple of years. They had Chris Carter there in 2015, and last year it was horrible. They started the year with Tyler White there, then they went to AJ Reed, and then eventually Marwin Gonzalez, who really is a utility player, was starting at first base every game. And so they have Yulieski Gurriel, who they signed from Cuba to a big deal. He could play over there. You have obviously Gonzalez as well, and Reed and White, and also a player like Colin Moran. And so first base is going to be a very interesting problem that AJ Hinch will have to solve, because that's really been the spot where the Astros have struggled a lot in the past couple of years. But that's pretty much about it for the Astros. Carlos Correa had his wisdom teeth removed, and so he's been unable to take part in team activities so far. And they have a lot of players that are about to go out to the World Baseball Classic. And so there's going to be opportunities for some of the young players that aren't participating in that to maybe make a name for themselves and maybe make the team.
Do you have like certain players you want to specifically talk about that you think will make the impact in spring training and maybe earn, a bench spot or maybe a starting spot, or who specifically in the back end of the rotation you think will step out, will make a name for themselves in spring training?
Yeah, for me, I look for Joe Musgrove to win that spot as in the rotation. He really impressed me going down the stretch. I think he's 23 years old, and so being thrown into a pennant race, he didn't have good starts against the Rangers, but against the Astros as a team didn't play well against the Rangers. But I think he has the most upside of those Mike Fiers, Brad Peacock, Charlie Morton, and so if he can kind of win a spot and add to hopefully a bounce back year from Keiko McHugh and McCullers, I think the Astros will have a good rotation.
How do you see Carlos Beltran working on this team? Is he going to be an outfield guy? Is he going to be mainly DH?
Yeah, I see him mainly DHing. I think there's so many outfielders. You also have Jake Marisnik in there, who's a defensive whiz. And I think at this point in his career, Beltran is probably going to be your everyday DH. Evan Gattis, of course, has been DH the last couple of years, and he's really moved to more of a backup catcher role. I'm sure he'll still have some starts at DH, and he's also played left field, but I see Beltran really as a DH.
A couple other tidbits for other teams as they start their spring training. The St. Louis Cardinals lost a young starting rotation candidate, Alex Reyes. He is most likely going to be getting Tommy John surgery soon. That will put him out of commission for the entire year, plus like 2 months of next year. So bad blow to St. Louis, who have been trying to keep up with the Chicago Cubs in the NL Central. Big blow to their rotation spot. I'm looking at it right now. They got Wainwright, Carlos Martinez, an iffy Mike Leake, and an iffy Lance Lynn, and a really iffy Michael Wacha. We were talking about Colby Lewis earlier. I believe it or not, he could probably work in St. Louis as a depth spot, at least for a little bit.
I would vomit the entire time I would see him in a Cardinals uniform.
That may be true, but I think Colby's happiness is more important than my disdain for the Cardinals.
No, everything's about me. You can't do this to me, Lewis. Why would you do this? But no, Lewis would be a perfect candidate to fill in that fifth spot in the Cardinals place. That also being said, the Cardinals are also just to think where they were like 3 to 4 years ago with the rotation that they had and all the promise that they had prior to that with Michael Wacha and Shelby Miller. C-Mart, and to see where they are at now is sort of it's a bit. It gives me some Schadenfreude joy, but also just like it's kind of surprising to see how quickly it can just blow up.
Yeah, Cardinals. Good for them for getting all these good starting pitching prospects, but I think they're in trouble if they can't fill out their rotation. That there's no way they can keep up with the Cubs. And I don't know if necessarily the window's closing, but they may see a bunch of wild cards for the next few years. Okay, so next team I guess would be the Atlanta Braves. There's a bunch of joy for the Atlanta Braves. As they got a new stadium opening in Atlanta, and they also have traded for Brandon Phillips from the Cincinnati Reds. To play second base, and the reason is because Sean Rodriguez was in a car crash last week, injured his shoulder, and the results from the doctors say that he's probably going to be out for the entire year. So they needed a second baseman, and they got Brandon Phillips. Again, this Braves team is going to go nowhere this year. It's probably going to be another 2 years before they're competitive. Them and the Phillies. I kind of like it. Brandon Phillips is a good veteran. I would just feel bad for Cincinnati Reds fans who have grown up watching Brandon Phillips play, him and Joey Votto. But if you're a Braves fan, at least you'll have a familiar face to look at.
That should be a pretty good middle infield going forward with what was his name again?
Dansby Swanson, the shortstop.
Yeah. Former first overall pick, traded to them from Arizona for Shelby Miller.
Yeah, so they have Ender Inciarte, Dansby Swanson, and Brandon Phillips all in that infield. It's going to be pretty good. They, like I said, the Braves aren't going to be competitive. They're not going to be as bad as you think they're going to be. So, I mean, an absolute optimistic look for the Braves would be just below 500, I'd say. But yeah, I'm actually going to go see them play against the Pirates in Clearwater in about 3 or 4 weeks. So I'll get a first-hand impression on that team, and I can report back to y'all. So the next would be the Padres signing Jared Weaver to a 1-year, $3 million contract. I feel bad for Jared Weaver. He's fallen pretty far now that you're ending up on the San Diego Padres. You're probably the only recognizable name on that rotation now.
I mean, as a Rangers fan, there's really no love lost. I mean, I remember the years that he would torment us. But I mean, at the same time, like you feel bad for someone, but at the same time, like it's exactly what happens when you lose your velocity, and that was really like your bread and butter the entire time. I mean, like he also had decent control too, but like he relied a whole lot on that fastball, and once it became like low 90s to below 90s, like people started teeing off on him. So I mean, it is what it is. I mean, he's over 30 years old now. So I mean, it was always going to happen. I mean, I feel more. I've always felt worse for someone like Tim Lincecum, who was like pretty much at the height of his powers and then just completely lost everything right when he turned 30. But it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Lastly, send a little farewell to Nick Swisher, who is retiring after 12 years in the league. He is going to be joining Fox Sports as an in-studio analyst. So, yeah, Nick Swisher's gone out of the league. He's always been a very solid player. I guess you could describe him as a good fantasy player. I've had him in a bunch of my leagues. He's not a superstar. I think he only made one All-Star game. But he put up some very solid numbers for Cleveland and the Yankees in his career. But obviously couldn't get a deal done this year, and is now retiring. So happy trails to you, Nick Swisher.
Okay, so let's move on to the NBA, and let's talk about the Rockets. They had a 1-1 week. They destroyed the Phoenix Suns last Saturday night. It was their 40th win of the year, and it was the second fastest that they've reached that plateau. It was their 8th game, scoring 130 points. And James Harden had 40 points in 29 minutes, which was the first time that a Rocket had done that since 1991. And so that was good. Wednesday night was bad. It was a horrific loss to the Miami Heat. Miami has been playing better, as we mentioned last week, but they led wire to wire, and it was a bad defensive performance, to say the least. It was really a reversion to last year's Rockets, where guys are just losing Miami Heat cutters off the ball. They weren't helping correctly, and transition defense wasn't good. And the offensive rebounds that they gave up 9 offensive rebounds in the second quarter alone, weren't boxing out, and really weren't focused and ready to play that game. And they were kind of already in all-star mode. Hassan Whiteside, the Miami Heat center, really dominated the Rockets. The Rockets, that's their weak spot. They don't have an interior defender that can scare opposing teams from driving to the basket and opposing big men. Nene, at the stage of his career, is just too old. He can't keep up with the younger bigs. Clint Capella has a lot of potential, but he's still not really ready. He's not strong enough to bang against the big guys. And you have Montrezl Harrell, who's he plays really hard and he has a lot of energy, can help on the weak side, but he's just not that tall. And so if you look at the standings right now, the Rockets are sitting in 3rd, and they're 4 games behind San Antonio, and they're 4 games ahead of the Clippers. And so they're in a good position. They're 40-18. And if you could have offered me that at the beginning of the year, I would have taken that in a heartbeat. But looking down the line, if they face a team like Memphis in the playoffs with Marc Gasol, or Utah, or even San Antonio in the second round, I think it's a concern, because they don't have the personnel on the inside that can really stop opposing teams. And I think they've gone through a schedule in February that's been really soft. They've had a lot of home games and a lot of days rest after a brutal January schedule. In March, it really picks up again. They have a stretch where they go to LA to play the Clippers, then they come home to play Memphis, Then they go to San Antonio to play the Spurs, come back home to play the Jazz, and then go take a brief trip to Chicago to play the Bulls, and then come back home to play the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so between the travel and the amount of playoff teams, that stretch is going to be challenging for them. And it will probably determine a lot of where they end up with their playoff positioning. Other than that, I want to wish good luck to Eric Gordon, who's in the 3-point shooting contest tonight at All-Star Weekend in New Orleans. And James Harden, obviously, is going to be starting for the West tomorrow night.
You know who else has won the 3-point contest? Dirk.
Yeah, how are those Mavs?
Bad, just terrible, really. I mean, they beat Orlando, but then turned around and lost to the Celtics and some other team. I mean, it's just they're stuck in a weird purgatory. Yeah, Detroit. Yeah. Yeah, they're just like stuck in some weird purgatory between like being a playoff team and being a terrible team. It's just like it's not fun to really talk about at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Other NBA notes. So Kevin Love went down with a knee injury. He's going to be out 6 weeks. And so the Eastern Conference really is up for grabs. Cleveland is still currently in first place, but Boston is behind them by 3 games. And then Washington's 5 games back. And Toronto, which has really dropped, they were the 2nd seed last year and they had dropped to the 5th seed. They're 7 games back. They made a splash this week by acquiring Serge Ibaka from the Orlando Magic for Terrence Ross and a first-round draft pick. And so Toronto's really going for it. Their defense has really struggled this year. They weren't able to really replace Bismack Biyombo, who they ironically lost to the Orlando Magic in the offseason. And so Ibaka brings shot blocking on the inside, as well as 3-point shooting. And so we'll see how the East ends up. The trade deadline is coming up this upcoming week, and there's rumors flying around. Of course, Carmelo Anthony is still on the block. You have Jimmy Butler, who's being circulated to potentially go to the Boston Celtics. And so this upcoming week will determine a lot of how the Eastern Conference ends up. And with Cleveland losing Love for 6 weeks, there's an opportunity there for a team like Boston or Toronto to move up and grab that 1 seed in home court potentially in a playoff series.
I'd also like to push Andrew Bogut. I know he doesn't have the stats, but we really just don't want him. So any team that's looking for a center, just come look at Dallas way.
Looking at you, Rockets.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk briefly some NFL news. Evan.
Yeah, not much really going on in the NFL. A couple, I guess, different things, signings, transitions, things like that. Giants cut Victor Cruz, so teams looking for a wide receiver this year. I want to look for Victor Cruz. Cameron Wake got a contract with the Miami Dolphins, 2-year, $19 million extension. It's $11 million guaranteed. Cameron Wake, one of the better defensive players on the Dolphins this year. And then, funny enough, the Browns signed a 6-year deal with long snapper Charlie Hewlett. He now officially becomes the highest paid long snapper in the NFL. So that's kind of fun.
Such a Browns move.
Really is. And on a not so light note in the NFL, 2 former stars in the NFL have gone into some legal trouble this week. Starting with Trent Richardson, went to Alabama, played for a different couple NFL teams, was arrested on a domestic violence charge. I think he made bail, but he still has a court date set for the charge. And Richardson's kind of been in trouble all his career. He was sued for assault in 2013. He was charged for it. And then Darrelle Revis, probably one of the better cornerbacks in the early 2010s, was arrested and then released on non-monetary bonds for 5 criminal charges, 4 of which are felonies. And also, so these include 1 count of conspiracy, 1 count of robbery, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and terroristic threats. So it seems to me like Darrelle Revis has just completely destroyed his career.
I mean, honestly, it's just been this long trend by the NFL to just doing this. I mean, I remember back like when it sort of peaked in 2014, where it was just constant. It was just such a constant stream of like one NFL football player after another getting arrested for some sort of like domestic violence or just regular old like assault. It's just I mean, I don't know what the NFL can do at this point, but at the same time, like it's just not getting through to people like who are NFL players. Or I mean, it's not getting like you're always. I mean, granted, there's always. I mean, it's such a huge group of people in terms of just like how people are like NFL players. You're going to have a few who are definitely are like bad apples, but I mean, it's you don't see that you don't see that nearly as much as the NBA. I feel you don't really see that as much at the NHL. You don't really even see that much with MLB. So I mean, I don't have any solutions to this.
Okay, so let's get to our final shout outs. And so I'll start. First, I want to shout out Brad Davis. And so MLS fans will know Brad Davis. He was often called the left-footed David Beckham. He was a master of the set pieces, and his delivery into the box on some of those crosses was unbelievable. He had a 14-year career. He finished third all-time in MLS in assists, fourth in games played, eighth in games started, and first in corner kicks taken. He played 10 years with the Dynamo, starting in 2006 when the team moved here from San Jose. And he helped the Dynamo win 4 conference championships and 2 MLS Cups. He was also a member of the U.S. men's national team. He played 17 games for them and was a member of the 2014 World Cup team that made it to the knockout round. And he actually started the game against Germany. And so Brad Davis coming back to Houston, signing the one-day contract. He is a Dynamo legend, and if there ever is an MLS Hall of Fame, he'll certainly be one of the first inductees. Second shout out is to Tracy McGrady. He was named as a finalist for the 2017 Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame today. He was one of 14 finalists. And so the final inductee list will be announced at the Final Four in April. But T-Mac, well-deserved. I think he should get in first ballot. 3 brilliant memories for me for him was obviously the 13 points in 35 seconds against the Spurs. Second was in 2005 in the playoffs, the dunk on Sean Bradley. If you haven't seen it, you should YouTube it. It is a sick dunk. And in 2008, he was an integral part of the 22-game win streak. And so he makes it another round in the Hall of Fame process, and hopefully he gets in. And also Rudy Tomjanovich, the Rockets coach that led them to the back-to-back championships, was also a finalist. And so good luck to Rudy T as well.
Oh, definitely. I think both are well deserving of being in the Hall of Fame this year. So I hope they both make it.
Yeah, don't ever underestimate the heart of a champion. And that's repeated every playoffs. And that was Rudy T.
I also want to give a shout out to three people in WWE who just won their first championships while with the company. First, Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt won his first WWE championship and first singles championship overall this past Sunday at Elimination Chamber. And it looks like he's probably going to be main eventing WrestleMania, which is arguably one of the highest honors you can have as a wrestler. Also this past Sunday, Naomi, who's been with the company for the past 8 years, I almost want to say. Yeah, 8 years. She finally won her first women's championship. Far and away, putting in some of the best work she's done in her career. She's been known as one of the most athletic and most agile performers in WWE, and so it was nice to see that. And also finally Bayley won her first women's championship after being promoted to the main roster. That being said, this one looks to be a bit short-lived because in storyline she was sort of like aided in her win by Sasha Banks, and it's very, very possible that they're probably going to find some way to take it away from her and wait until WrestleMania to crown her as women's champion. But congrats to those three.
Yeah. So on other small sports, the PGA, shout out to Jordan Spieth, former University of Texas golfer, for winning the Pebble Beach Pro-Am Open last week in Pebble Beach, California. He won by 4 strokes. He pretty much dominated that field. So he finished 19 under. He hit 16 of 18 greens in regulation on the last round. which is pretty dang good. And he won, I guess, a $1.3 million purse for that tournament. So congrats to him. He's actually had a really good 2017 so far. He's finished under par in all the rounds as he's played. Currently, he's playing the Genesis Open. Right now, he's tied for 11th. I guess they had some rain, so they're still kind of in the second round. In PGA itself, there are not going to be that many tournaments that are really of an importance for a while. The Arnold Palmer's in 4 weeks, and then the Masters is going to be in 7 weeks. So Jordan Spieth has plenty of chances to prepare for the Masters, especially after his epic collapse last year. Then shout out to the Texas women's basketball team, are putting the men to shame with all their victories. They just on Monday finished a double overtime win against Florida State. 92-88 was the final. Brooke McCarty, massive props to her for playing every single minute of that game. So that's 50 minutes. She had 29 points as a career high. And just shout out to the team in general. They had won their 19th game in a row. And were pretty much parading, just beating any opponent that they could. And then they lost to Oklahoma about 2 hours ago. They only lost by 1 point, but it breaks that streak of 19 games that they won in a row. So this is a shame, but they're still 21-5. They have a shot against Baylor on Monday. If they win that game, they pretty much guarantee a 1 spot for the Big 12 tournament, and have a legitimate shot at a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So props to them. Hopefully they do end up getting that 1 and not end up in the same Final Four section as UConn again.
Shout out to UConn women's basketball for winning their 100th game in a row over the past year or so, I want to say.
It's been like
broke it against South Carolina on Monday.
Like 3 years.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that this is the second time they've been going on an extended winning streak. Obviously, I don't. Last I remember, I don't think they necessarily got to 100 wins before, but I mean that just speaks to how great Gino Ariyama is. Just also, obviously, but above all, the talent that this women's team has is just incredible, and it's just incredible how they can continue to have such sustained success for pretty much like the past 20 years. I feel at this point, it's become absurd. Congrats to them.
People in Connecticut love their college basketball, especially their women's basketball. I've been to one of their stadiums. It was honestly the most hostile environment I think I've ever felt for any basketball team. As someone who was rooting for the away team last year in Texas women's, so props to their fans. They just got to think of
for sure.
Just got to think of who can beat this UConn team. I don't think there really is a candidate.
No. Yeah, no. I mean, my dad's from went to school at UConn for both his undergrad and grad. When they're away, there's so. But yeah, and I guess one more shout out to Mark Cuban for his ability to show up at the Celebrity All-Star game last night. But yeah, he wore the number 46 as a little bit of a jab towards Donald Trump. Obviously not in an attempt to stop Donald Trump. That's pretty much out of his power at this point. But it's just a fun little jab there. While also facing off against the lead singer of Arcade Fighter, Win Butler. But yeah.
Mark Cuban, what a classy guy.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Evan, for being on the show.
No problem. I definitely will stay in touch with some spring training news and tidbits, and hopefully we can have some more discussion later on.
All right. And that wraps it up for this week. I'll talk to you next week, Nathan.